Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening.
Do either of you want to? I always am offering. I'm happy to do it. But either of you want to do the explanation of this one?
No, you can go ahead. I was gonna say I could do it, but
Do you want to?
you're good. You're so good at it. You're so good at it, Colby.
Okay.
I
You know,
am not. I'm being sincere.
I'm like on a spectrum, right? Like I'm very gullible about these things.
Oh, okay.
Hi, and welcome back once again to After Dinner Conversation. What I do wrong?
Oh, nothing. I'm smiling and I'm like, we're
Oh,
not recording. And I'm like,
oh no, I'm recording. Um, that's where we start. What am I doing wrong? Welcome back to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions, where we get short stories, we discuss them, we do all sorts of fun stuff. We've been doing this now for a while. We're finishing up season 3, actually, and our anthology season 3 just came out a little while ago. And I'm Colby, and I'm here with Ashley
hello.
and Jeremy
Hi.
and Sarah.
Hello.
There you go. See, I now see the spacing in the audio editing, so it's much easier to find it as long as I keep the same pattern of the order I introduce people. Okay,
Right.
so we've got all sorts of stuff. Like and subscribe, podcast, short stories. We have a website, afterdinnerconversation.com, and all that stuff. Okay, now the important stuff. We've got a story that was our contest winner. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but we do these contests, every quarter, basically. Matter of fact, I'm reading them all today, the ones from our most recent contest. This was from our last contest, and it won. Like, I wouldn't say handily, but it was clearly the winner. And It's called The Waiting Game
The waiting
by
room.
The Waiting Room,
Waiting
sorry,
room.
by Kate Choi. And so here's the big reveal about this one. I emailed the person and I was like, "Hey, thank you so much. You won. It's so cool. We're so excited to publish it. Here's your money because you win $250 if you win the writing contest." Um, and I'm like, "Cool." So I sent her an agreement, a contract, and she sent it back. And she's like, "Hey, do I need to do anything special on account of me being like 15 or 16 years old?" And I was like, yeah, you can't enter into a valid contract. Let me change it so that your mom or dad can sign on your behalf, so that it's a valid contract, so I can, get the rights to publish this. Uh,
By the way, she initially submitted when you do the contest, you
yeah,
can opt to get feedback of what was good or bad about your story. And you had minimal
yeah, yeah,
minimal negative feedback with this story. It was solid all around.
yeah. Because you pay $25 to just have your story read. If you pay $40, then we read it and we judge just like any other story. But I also, or someone in our group, writes up like a page review of it, of like, here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's why we selected it, here's why we didn't. And we get, a third of the people that submit, they pay the $40 because that way it's not just a black box. Like you actually know, why didn't I win? What can I do better? It's actually a really cool service. And so she paid for the service, and I emailed her back, and I was like, "So keep doing what you're doing. Like you're good. Like the feedback is,
Keep writing. Keep
yeah."
doing what you're
Like
doing.
someday when you have your first novel out, be like, "Hey, a special thanks to After Dinner Conversation for publishing me when I was a teenager." That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because she is. I assume you guys had the same opinion. Like I saw you smiling a little bit, so I assume that this was a story that you were like, "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah, I enjoyed the story for sure.
yeah." So I should tell, for the people that are listening, I should tell them what happens in the story. So it's called The Waiting Room because it starts off with basically a boy in a waiting room, kind of like a white, plain, boring, dystopian, typical waiting room in a doctor's office, but a little bit more like less windowy, like less windows is the impression I get. And he's there, and he is trying to help strike up a conversation with a man who's also in the room, and the man is really gruff and grumbly and rude, and he's writing notes on a scrap of paper. And what you very quickly realize is that this is part of a government program where you are assigned dreams. Like not sleepy dreams, but like what your hopes are as a person, of like what you get up in the morning and you're super excited about. And this kid, his dream that was assigned to him, that was sort of written into his conscious, was to be a piano player, except it turns out he's not a very good piano player. Even though it's his, like, he's, obsessed with it now because the government gave him this obsession, this focus. And so he's just like, la, 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 la. And he's coming back to get reassigned because he's trying to have his talents match up with his passion.
It's because he wasn't successful.
He wasn't successful, right?
If you aren't successful, you get reassigned a new dream.
Yeah.
So he loved piano, but he understood, I'm not successful at it. This is the program. Now I'm back to be reassigned a new dream.
Right. Yeah, and he's trying to strike up a conversation with the old guy who was, I think, previously assigned the dream of being a writer, and he gave it up because he wasn't successful at it, but he still loves it. And so he's trying to talk the government into assigning him back the dream of being a writer, even though he's already established that he's not successful at it. And he's just like, I love it, I want to do it. He's like kind of this gruff guy, a little bit crazy maybe. And then a third person gets pushed into the room, sort of involuntarily, and the door locks behind her. And she is a florist, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she loves being a florist. But the government, I don't know if she's not successful at it, or the government just doesn't need so many florists. Maybe a combination of both.
Yeah, I think they imply that she's not successful.
Right, but she loves it.
And so she's trying to actively fight the system and
Right.
be like, it doesn't have to be this way.
Right.
So you have the boy who's kind of bought into, this is just how it is. I wasn't successful. Time to get reassigned. You have the old man who is upset that the system is how it is. And then here enters the woman who is actively trying to wake them up that it shouldn't be this way.
Right.
And she goes on a
whole rant about it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that she just loves it. And so I think by the end of the story, the medical people come for the woman and they grab her and pull her out of the room. And then the kid kind of just goes back to talking to the old man, and that's the story.
Yeah.
And the kid, through the whole thing, the narrator, he seems okay with having his dream reassigned because he's like, look, the world doesn't need a million piano players that are average. I'm pretty not successful at this. They need doctors and engineers, and shouldn't the government help us love the thing they actually need, and maybe that we're actually good at.
Right.
At any rate, I think that's the whole story. It's a short story. It's like 1,500 words, 1,800 words. But I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Likes?
Well, yeah, and there was more about the woman.
Oh, yeah. What did I miss?
She talked about being reassigned several times, and she was always successful but never liked what she was doing, and came back, and finally they assigned her being a florist, and she's like, I love this. This makes me happy. And,
That's right.
But now they want to reassign me. And the boy's like, well, you must not be successful. He's like, I was successful. I was always successful, is what she says.
But it's just not what society needed.
I'm always good at this. Right. And all these previous ones, I didn't like it. I was a successful accountant, but I was just overworked. And,
right.
It didn't,
That's right. And she talked about, that's right. Didn't she talk about how, like, I knew I didn't like it because I would go for walks, and I realized that I liked the walks so much.
Yeah.
And that it was the space between the dreams that I was happiest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I wasn't being an accountant, even though that was my passion and that was my thing. But I realized that I was going for walks and I liked those even more.
Yeah. And he says, of course they can take your dream away if, you were happy, but you weren't successful. And if that's the case, it must not have been the right dream. So,
right.
Well, her argument is that she was definitely a successful florist, but they're just removing her dream, reassigning her because they don't need florists.
correct.
Right.
Right.
Some sort of balance.
So it's arbitrary almost. It's not really the fair situation that the government makes it out to be, like, oh, you're successful or you're not. And if you're not successful, we'll reassign you to a new dream where you will be successful.
But isn't this a little bit like what the government, this isn't one of the questions, but isn't this a little bit like what the government already does with scholarships? right? Like in India, they need a lot more engineers, and so if you want to come to America as to be an engineer, the Indian government, assuming your grades are good enough and all that, they will help you go to America or some university because India needs all kinds of engineers. Or one of our friends got a degree in was it computer science or something like that, Laura, and she didn't pay for any of it because they were like, "Look, we just don't have any women who are interested in engineering and computer engineering."
Right.
And so, like, if you have an aptitude for this, and we would really like some women in this field, so free money,
And now,
right?
And now she works for one of these
Right.
rocket companies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I feel like I was really quick in my head to criticize the government in this story because it's written in an oppressive way. But I feel like there are subtle ways that the government does this right
Absolutely.
now.
The story came to me as a criticism of, and you can link this to free market capitalism, where it you have to have a utilitarian value to society, and if you don't have a utilitarian value to society, you are a drain on society.
Yeah.
So you must, you know, have a career and a thing that benefits society, not just yourself. It doesn't matter if you're not happy
Yeah.
doing it. Because you benefit society, you're a valuable member of society.
Yeah. You reminded me of, and this is going back a long ways, but do you remember how I was so madly in love with the story that we did, Rainbow People of the Glittering Glade, which we did a podcast
Yeah.
about the Drolls, right? And if you didn't have value to society, you slowly turned into a frozen statue.
Right.
And I was so gung ho on that. And then I read this story and I was like, oh, yeah, Jessica was right. Like, like maybe the world doesn't need more florists, but you need to be a florist, right? Or whatever the case may
Right.
be. Yeah, as time's gone on, this story made me agree more with Jessica about that podcast. I think that was like podcast number 7 or 8. That was early on.
Yeah. I would say Jessica's always right.
God, that is so true. Don't tell her though, because she already knows she's always right, and she's already insufferable. If we admit that she's always right, she's going to come back on the podcast just to tell us that she's always right. Ashley, what do you think of the story?
I really liked the story. I feel
You were all grinny when you finished it. You had like a warm glow about you when you finished reading it.
well, it's a nice read, and it really makes you draw parallels between this world and how our society kind of already does this. Look at where they put funding in for schools.
Oh,
They
yeah.
always talk about what are the first programs to go are the arts.
Right.
They cut funding from that,
STEM education. It's all about STEM.
STEM education, and it really I kind of drew on that parallel with how we do that in today's society. And then I took a step and I thought about dreaming. In this perspective is what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember, as a kid, we all dream of being like, I'm going to be a princess, I'll be a doctor, I'll be a teacher. And then at some point, everyone grows up, I'm going to be the athlete. And then at some point you go, okay,
How can I make a living?
how can I make a living doing what I'm passionate about? Everyone kind of has this change in them. Is it a viable option? Can I make a living out of it? And then somewhere along the line, the amount of time that you spend working toward your dream dwindles as you end up having to take up a job that actually pays money.
Yeah.
And I wish it was true that everyone could 100% pursue what they're super passionate about. Wake up in the morning and be excited, and that's what they're assigned to do, and they get to go do it with all this gusto. But then the gut-wrenching part is they can easily go and take it away from you, whether you're successful or not. And
I remember having the conversation with my parents, maybe my mom or my dad, I don't know who it was now. But I said, hey, when I go to ASU, I think my major is going to be history. I want to be a history. I want to have major in history. And they were like, so that's not really a job.
Yeah, what are you going to do with that?
Right. And they're like, why don't...
Oh, I had
like,
the exact opposite.
And they were like, why don't you get a degree to be a history teacher? And I was like, oh, yeah, I like teaching too. But I originally wanted to major in history, and then I became secondary ed with a focus in history.
But the opposite happens too.
Yeah.
You ask kids, what are you studying at school? Business. Why? Because it gets good money. And I'm like, so you have really no interest in business. It just gives you an opportunity to make more money down the line. So you see it
Yeah.
on both aspects.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Sarah, you saying your experience was different? You
So,
I don't know who it is. Maybe it's you, Jeremy. Sorry. I just keep hearing a little bit of breathing. You're good though. Let's keep going.
so I was saying, Sarah, your
Yeah.
experience was
Yeah, you're
different.
opposite.
You had an
You're like you wanted to
opposite.
get a degree in
I had the
engineering,
pic-
and your parents were like, "Why don't you go into the arts?"
exactly. That's exactly
You're
the
kidding
conversation
me.
that I had with my parents.
Wow.
So, I graduated from high school early, and I went to junior college. I went to Phoenix College and like flew through there in 3 semesters.
Okay.
And I was getting really, really good grades, and I was doing well in science and math. And my parents, I was 18, just about to be a junior in college.
Oh wow.
And my parents were like, "What are you going to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'll transfer to ASU, and I think I'll major in physics." And my dad was like, and I was like, "Maybe I'll be an engineer." My dad is an engineer. He's a rocket scientist, right? So he was just like, "No, that's not you." So I decided to take a couple of years off. And when I came back, I was like, "You're right. I'm a dance major." And so I got my BFA in dance instead.
Were they
Not dance education. Not dance education.
Just dance.
What was
I got my
their-
teaching cert separately.
Wow.
What was their response to that, knowing you were going in for a dance major? Did they communicate any reservations on how you were going to turn that into a career or make a living? Nothing. They just wanted you to go for your passion, who you are at heart, and 100% support.
They always saw me as a talented artist. Like I don't think my parents ever saw me any differently.
Oh.
And both of my parents are artists too, right? But my dad is also an engineer. Okay, but
He's got both sides of the brain working.
Yeah.
Well, and my brother is an engineer. My big brother is too. So I guess I just kind of figured, well, if I'm going to go to college, that's what I'm going to do too. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but both my parents were like, "Nah, we think you need some time off. You're way ahead of all your peers."
Nobody ever says, "Yeah, I became an engineer." I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Usually, that's what you say about getting a degree in like French
History or
film.
art
Yeah.
or-
No, the opposite is
Yeah, I think it's just like when I looked around at my family, I saw a bunch
Oh,
of
okay.
engineers.
That's fair.
no that my brother wanted to be an engineer. Like his brain works that way.
Yeah.
And was the perfect career for him. He was destined to be one with the way that he enjoys it immensely. So
Yeah.
engineering can be the
No,
big
for each
shooting
person.
star for whoever it is, but
I have no idea how a 16-year-old wrote this story. By the way, like
I know, it's really
the
interesting.
ability to ask the question, to ask that kind of question, is so mature and so just I'm stumped. Like I like that's the kind that the question asked in this story wouldn't have occurred to me until I was like 30 or 35. Like I feel like you have
Much
to
older, right?
yeah, like I feel like at some level you have to like go to school, get a job, be safe, like daydream about the thing you wish you had done, and then you write a story about it. But like I don't know, I was just really impressed.
Yeah, I think it is a pretty mature perspective. I got, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this made me think of something that I've thought about a lot in my career as an artist and as an art teacher.
Yeah.
Is exactly what Ashley said. What's the first thing that always gets cut? It's the arts.
Yeah.
So a while back, I did a presentation on STEAM versus STEM, and like nothing has changed. All of the current research that comes out says that the arts are just as important as
Sure.
the maths and the sciences to the development of a child. So what are we doing with our education system here? Are we raising functional members of adult society who are flexible of mind, able to contribute in healthful ways to the community, communicate effectively, and have grown-up relationships that are successful? Or are we raising workers?
Yeah.
So this is the question that the STEAM versus STEM
Well, I mean,
I think asks. So if we're not willing to put money, because the arts to a child are developmental,
Sure.
like just as developmentally important as logic puzzles and spelling and reading.
Yeah.
But we haven't really got that fundamental idea in our brains. We still think of the arts as like dessert. This is something you only get when you've been good. So a child who is having emotional problems in class, they are punished by taking away their art classes.
Right.
They see it
If a
as
child is
just
struggling
play.
in math,
Yeah.
exactly. If you're struggling in math, you get
Nobody takes away your math.
they have to give up their art class.
No
in
mathing
general.
until you get
I'm
better at art.
generalizing here. I totally
Yeah.
realize that.
Right.
But yeah, no math, no arting or even recessing until you get better at math.
Yeah.
And so then the question becomes, who are the artists in our society?
Yeah.
Only the people who can afford it. So if the government takes away funding for the arts in schools, then the general idea is that philanthropic societies will, or groups of people, will give money to schools to fund their art programs. So what schools are they giving that money to?
Sure. Ones in
So
wealthier
then-
communities.
Right. So your elite, rich society is deciding who gets to do art and what kind of art gets to be done.
But to some degree, I mean, isn't that historical, right? Like you look at any like sort of
Sure.
Renaissance artist, they always had some wealthy benefactor that like paid them to do art, right? Like the Medicis or whoever.
Hi, this is Colby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an added incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion.
That like paid them to do art, right? Like the Medicis or whoever that are like, yeah, here's
Right, and-
like we're rich, we like sculptures, go do sculpture.
And I think historically we've decided as a society that that's okay, but is it really? And I think that's one of
Yeah.
the questions that this story asks.
Yeah,
They don't need artists. They don't need pianists or florists or painters or poets.
yeah,
But, people like me, or even the author of the story maybe, would argue that yes, society does need those things. It's very important.
That's that,
And so this woman is arguing that too in her rant.
yeah,
and that's really scary to think of a world like that where someone could just easily come along and be like, no more music, art, decoration, none of that. And as a people, what is it that hits our emotions? It's a song, it's a movie, it's a play, it's a piece of art. It like hits you in the soul. Math doesn't hit you in the soul. You don't see
Well-
numbers and have that like
some people
emotional
do,
response.
but not usually. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
not
So,
accessible in the same way art is.
yeah, it doesn't. You don't see a math problem and are brought to tears in the same manner.
Well, some,
you know?
yeah,
Some
no,
people, but-
some people might. But the point is it's not less important.
Yes.
Art is not less important than math.
Yeah.
And I think in the pandemic, people have had this argument a lot. Like, what did we really find that we needed? People forget that all the people that make those Netflix movies that we spend so much time watching,
Right.
those are artists.
Yeah,
You know.
maybe not Michael
So-
Bay, but the other ones.
And the
Yeah.
video game designers,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed.
Those were kids who with a sketchbook in 5th grade at one point in their lives.
Yeah,
So dissuading or discouraging your children from pursuing the arts is a time-honored tradition in society, but maybe
Yeah.
it's not the right path.
I'm reminded of the. I read an article or read something a while ago about the idea of why you need to promote people that have an arts background, and it's this idea of like, some important person in some important meeting is like, I need to mentor somebody who shows a lot of talent. And who do they mentor? The person who they see as the younger version of themselves, right? Which means they tend to be white, they tend to be male, they tend to have a business degree, they tend to be an extrovert potentially, that, all these sort of things. And so because those are the people that because that's who they are, that's who they're interested in and find most compelling, and that's who they mentor, and so that's who their successors are. And so you don't get people of color or people of not of just diverse backgrounds, because they don't have someone who sees themselves in them that then pull them along to positions of power. Um, and so it becomes a sort of perpetuating system. The other thing I wanted to mention, Sarah, that I thought was a great point is, the setup of the school system is not to make people, it is to make workers, right? That's why we have
Hmm.
set hours. That's why we have bells. That's how we have grades. That's how we have, because you're trying to explain to someone, train someone how to work in a factory. Um,
Yes, I agree with that. I feel like we talk a lot about how we're not trying to do that as educators. We
sure.
spend a lot of time
Well, I don't mean teachers, but the
saying that we're not
system.
trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are kind of working against a system that is built on this idea and really defaults to it.
Yeah.
As opposed to the idea that a liberal education,
Right.
and by that, like a classical education,
Sure.
literature, math, history,
Yeah.
the arts, an education in the arts plus math and science
Yeah.
really builds a well-rounded person who can succeed in society,
Yeah.
instead of pushing them down this, it's just the math and science and engineering that are important,
Right.
so you can be a successful worker. We don't care about anything else because, again, you have to have a utilitarian value to society.
So let me ask you all.
And this is only seen by
Right.
being a successful employee or successful worker.
So let me ask you all a question. Would you support or not support enrollment quotas or caps? So let's say that somebody figures out, like, we don't have that, just we need more people that can build bridges. And so they're like, we're gonna, have 5,000 people admitted to the bridge building program at a university. And we're not saying we don't want writers, but we don't need as many writers. And so we're going to admit 1,000 people to the writing program at the universities. And you can do whatever you want. You can try to be a writer. You can try to be a bridge builder. But I'm just telling you, if you try to be a writer, there's only 1,000 slots, and if you try and be a bridge builder, there's 5,000 slots. So it's not them telling you what to do, like in the story, but it's sort of steering it so that the results, the quantities turn out correct. Would you be more
Right.
okay with that?
I like that point that you made at the beginning too, because we were talking about scholarships, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're a flute player, it's really difficult to get a scholarship, but if you're a bassoon player,
Right.
it's pretty easy.
So you got to take up the oboe.
So there's so in your bridge builder versus writer scenario, who gets to be the writers? The people that don't need those slots. They're going to be a writer regardless because they don't need a job.
Mm.
But everybody who needs that job. So she, the redhead in this, talks about benefits and reductions.
Yeah.
I needed the benefits, the reductions,
Yeah.
right? So there is a need there. And yeah, I don't know about supporting that because there's definitely like a reason to encourage people to do things that are needed.
Right. Because otherwise, everyone
maybe-
Don't
otherwise
want it to
everyone becomes a fireman.
Right. You don't want it to be where only the very, very privileged are allowed to do something other than be a bridge builder.
Right.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Yeah. Sure.
Do you mind taking a break?
Yeah.
for
We can take a
moment?
break. Don't stop your
What do you need
don't
here?
stop your audio though.
No, that's fine.
Okay, babe, what's up?
It's time to dance.
She wants to play Animal Crossing.
Okay.
Well, you're gonna have to. I'm not gonna handle a temper tantrum right now, so you're gonna have to wait till I'm done. Okay?
But we're
Unless
pretty, I
you
feel like
can
we're
get
pretty
him to
close
trade
to
with
done,
you,
maybe 10 or
okay?
15 minutes.
Just wait. If you can get him to agree to switch with you, it's fine. Bring me the switch and I'll do it. But if he's gonna start screaming, I can't deal with that right now. I told them.
So we had
Okay,
we had an
I'm so
hour of
sorry.
talking before we started. So to be fair to them,
Yeah. Okay.
right? And
Almost back.
it's okay. We'll wait.
All right, there we go.
So bridge building is what you were talking about. Were you okay with that?
Oh, yeah. I think I finished my sentence.
And I was
didn't
thinking,
Yeah, I did.
but what would be better, caps and quotas, or promote that through
Yeah.
scholarships?
And this is the thing I struggle with, right? Is because there's lots of in science fiction or dystopian stories, there's always a lot of hard ways that the government controls people. And I'm like, no, don't do that. But then you look at the way we do tax incentives and scholarships, and there's lots of soft ways the government controls people, and nobody seems to have a problem
Right.
with that.
But what if all things being equal, people would just kind of gravitate towards what they loved, and you just have to assume that enough people love bridge building that there would be bridge builders, and they might even be better bridge builders because they didn't feel like they were forced or cornered into that position.
Yeah.
Do you really think it's true that everybody would want to be a writer or a poet or a dancer or
Firefighter.
a movie star?
Like, everyone would be a firefighter if they could be.
I don't think so.
What?
I know plenty of students. I know
I
plenty of
would not be a
students in my
firefighter.
theater program who have a passion for science.
Yeah.
Do they know about
So, I
firefighting?
don't know.
Right.
Oh goodness.
I wanted to be a pilot as a kid.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
You know, that was like, I want to fly planes. That sounds like a lot of fun.
So what happened there? When did that dream? That was actually one of the questions. What dreams drive us? Where do you think dreams that or wait, that was the other one. What made you not continue to pursue?
Yeah, what made you not be a fighter pilot? Or change? Did you just change your mind?
To be a, yeah, at some point it was like, that seems like a lot of work.
Okay.
I don't know. It was just, you know, and I don't think there's an easy path. If you want to be a pilot, you really have to pay to go to school to learn to be a pilot.
Yeah, be in the
So
military.
it's something
and-
that requires, right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just a commercial pilot. You got to go
Yeah.
directly pay for that. There's not scholarships for being a pilot. So it really has to be a passion, and it wasn't that kind of a passion.
Sure, it was just an interest.
Yeah.
What about the self? This is one of the questions too about the selfishness aspect of it. Like I'm always reminded of I don't know if I've said this in a while, but I have said it in the past of like, you know, if you're just born with like a giant penis, like shouldn't you kind of do porn? Like isn't that like if you're born with a natural talent, like what if Mozart had been like, you know what? Like I'm the greatest musician probably to ever live, you know, arguably. Uh, but I really want to be a dentist. Like that just sounds like fun.
Let him be a dentist.
Like, yeah, no, I agree. But isn't that a little bit selfish to know that you could
But don't you
be adding to the sum of humanity and you are not because you really want to be a florist,
But
a mediocre
don't you
florist.
think somebody like Mozart as a dentist would have been somebody who advanced the field of dental science greatly?
Maybe.
Because he was such a genius in whatever he did.
I'll give you
It
Newton.
just happened to be
I'll
that-
give you Newton. I'm not so sure about Mozart.
Well, it'd be like me being like, my dream is to be a gymnast. Ashley, you're 5'11". I'm gonna be a gymnast. Like, I will never be a gymnast. I am a tall, muscular, like,
Yeah.
can't do a backflip. But if
Right.
that's my
You could-
dream, it's just not, it's like physically not possible for me.
You could never be in ballet.
Yeah.
The professional. You'd never be a
Oh
professional
no, there's
ballet.
tall professional
are?
ballerinas.
Okay.
They're few and far between, and they're soloists,
Right.
and they are phenomenally talented because they usually skipped the court of ballet. But
Because there's
like,
4 of them in the whole
'cause
world.
They're too tall. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's an example
the-
of like you could love something. You could really really excel in one area, but if your heart and passion is in something else, even though you're going to be mediocre at it, if that's the thing that sets your soul on fire, if that's the thing that makes you come alive, I would much rather have a person doing what brings them joy and it, like lights up their world than a bunch of minions walking around being drolls and robots at something that maybe they're fantastic at, but they're not the ones that are gonna push the field because they're not
So
interested.
you're okay if Usain Bolt is like, you know what I really want to be as an accountant.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, he has a great talent, but if that's not something that he really, really wants to do,
Yeah.
like I had to walk away from basketball. I fell out of love in basketball,
Yeah.
and I was like invited to camps as an 11-year-old. like invited back to camps, MVP, all this other stuff. And I was like, I don't love it anymore.
Mm.
And that was really hard to do, but
Makes you a better person,
makes
like
me
a happier person.
it does.
Yeah.
The only thing I have a problem when it comes to careers, if you're like, I really, really want to be some career, some struggling, whatever profession it may be, and now you're no longer able to provide for yourself or
Yeah.
care for
Yeah,
yourself,
it's all different when you've got kids.
that's kind of where that
Well,
line gets a little fuzzy there,
right.
where there is responsibility that needs to be met, but at the same time, I don't want to dull your shine, but you've got to meet kind of some way, because you have people that are, on unemployment
That's why
because
only the super privileged get to follow their dreams.
Mhm.
Yeah. Some people just have to go to work.
Yep. So what happens to her at the end? Because she's not reassigned, she's resigned. Please exit for resignation.
I think that's the
I thought that
I think
was
that's the adjective of
what they're calling
of
it.
reassignment, like the verbiage of reassigning,
You think so?
reassignmentization.
I went somewhere dark with that.
They killed her.
Yeah.
Oh, I took it to mean that she was like, you're being reassigned for reassignment, but maybe
Please
not.
exit for resignation. And
So we
she
gotta
doesn't even
look
have a
that up.
name. She has a number.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So this society has gone to a point where the individual is no longer important.
Yeah,
It's only the larger collective and how you fit into the.
yeah, sure.
So if she's railing so hard against this system, then maybe they don't call it.
No, resignation, the formal act of leaving or quitting one's office or position.
Oh, there you go. To resign. I'm curious, what did you guys think of the selfishness thing?
I
Do
don't
you agree
know.
that a person should pursue their passion even if they're going to be mediocre at it? I mean, Jeremy, you've followed music for a long time.
And I'm
Absolutely.
mediocre at it. Yeah.
You're not. Gosh.
Um, uh, absolutely. I think you should follow a passion, but what I feel like we end up with in society is a lot of people who have a job and have a hobby,
Right.
and their hobby is the particular art that they do have a passion for, but there's a decision made at some point. You no longer focus on this as a career. It's an avocation. It's something
Sure.
you're doing not to make money, not to make a living. You're not a starving artist, because starving artists are just people who are too selfish to get jobs
Yeah.
to support themselves.
Okay.
And they want to they just want to
Sarah's
focus
rolling
on
her
their
eyes.
art. I know.
No, he's right though.
We've had this conversation.
I've had this conversation with students
Yeah.
before who think
But
that
is
the
it-
starving artist is a lifestyle, and I'm like, it's not.
Right, go get a job.
Go get a job.
But doesn't that make you
know,
kind
to
of die?
pay your
Doesn't
rent.
that make you kind of die just a little bit inside when a person comes to that conclusion of like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should work at a coffee shop to just make barely enough money, and I'm going to be a starving artist. Maybe like I should accept the promotion to like, be the manager at the coffee shop.
Right.
Part of being a successful artist is giving yourself boundaries.
Mm.
So you cannot, my opinion, okay, lots of artists, everybody has a different process behind how they create their art, but my opinion has always been that I cannot do art 24/7. My brain, there was no motivation there. You have to give yourself a boundary. You have to give yourself something else to do so that those boundaries, those time constraints, they put the pressure on you to create.
Create focus.
Right?
they do the same thing with athletes. If you are focused on your particular sport 24/7, you burn out. Like you need a lot of
Yes.
actual athletes do like a side job online or go to school part-time at the same, just to mentally break their mind up.
So yeah, I don't think that having a job as an artist is a bad thing at all. I think even if you if you were successful enough to be an artist and make your full living off of that, I feel like you would still find lots of other ways to spend your time.
I think what happens with us in society is I think growing up, we get a lot of feedback on what we're naturally good at, combining with what we intrinsically have a desire to do. And so you kind of balance the two out, I think. Like, oh, I got a lot of feedback that I'm good at math growing up. And you're like, yeah, I am good at math.
So
Oh,
that feedback makes you love it.
this comes easier to me. This is kind of fun. Like, just hearing that feedback feels good. Combining that also with but I really love this other aspect. I would like to think that a lot of people try to marry the two, what their aptitude for, like what they're good at naturally, with what they really love to do. I think that would be kind of that would be the ideal, where you get to kind of marry the two.
Sure.
But it's not always.
And people tend to love what they're good at, right? Not always, but
Yeah.
like it's fun being good at something.
Yeah, definitely. It has its own rewards.
Yeah.
You know,
So let me just ask you guys, and this will be our last question we finish up on here. I'm curious to hear from each of you. If you could somehow trick your brain to make you love something, like you genuinely, it became your dream, like the way they are in the story, right? And you just woke up one morning, you're like, oh my God, yeah, that sounds real. Like that's the equivalent of curing cancer to me. Like I'm super excited to do it every day. And you could somehow trick yourself into that. Is there something that you would trick yourself into loving? Like the way in the story sort of assigns you a dream.
learning languages.
Yeah? Like
Would
if that
be,
could,
I
if
don't
you could
know,
somehow
it's
trick
something-
yourself into having that passion for that.
Right, the drive to
And it would feel
actually sit
genuine,
down and learn
of
and
course.
use and yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
You know, where every other attempt has just been, this is boring.
Great.
I don't.
C.
For example,
Yeah. Sarah?
Sciences.
If you could just make yourself learn to
Completely.
love them.
I think I do love them. I just don't have an aptitude the way that I thought I did when I was in college, I think. But see, tricking myself into loving something, I do what I have a passion for. Like what
It's
I
already
do sets
aligned.
me on fire.
Yeah.
Right. So if I were to do something completely different, it would probably have to be like astronomy, you know?
Okay.
Like that would be amazing. Astrophysics is so, yeah.
Sure.
But it's so foreign to me and fascinating to me that
Sure.
I think that's what I would choose.
Ashley?
So the question is, what do I wish I
If you could
had
make
more of a passion for?
if you could if you could implant a dream in yourself, like a passion into yourself, that you don't currently have, is there anything that you would implant that passion? Of course, you wouldn't. It would feel genuine to you. It wouldn't feel fake.
So basically, what is something that I wish
Like you cared more about
I cared more about?
global warming.
No, I care about that. I wish I cared more about literature.
That's fair.
I really never got into it. Being forced to read certain stories in school, I didn't
Sounds like
grasp.
you had bad teachers too.
I never grasped the material
yeah,
very
and
well.
the classics are hard to read.
They're to be
You remember
appreciated.
Moby
He's
Dick?
They're to be
trying-
appreciated, not liked.
He's trying to have me read. Colby's
Right.
trying to have me read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I read like a page and a half, and I was like, I don't get it. And he's like, "Do you read it?" And I was like, "Yep, don't get it. It's disturbing. I don't want to read more of it. I don't like it." And it was the way it's written. I was just like, no, done, no, not interested. And Colby was actually really upset. He's like, really? Because it's one of my favorite books. And I'm like, nah, nope. I'm like, we actually switched stories. I had him read a fun travel story that I came along, which I found was hilarious. It's called Don't Go There.
Yeah.
And Colby's like, I read the first chapter. It was okay.
Reads
And I was
like-
like, what? It's fascinating
It
and
reads like Harry
imaginative.
Potter.
And
Like you turn the page, you're like, what did they really mean? Nope, exactly what they said.
well, part of it is growing up. I never grasped that
Yeah.
second and third dimension. And so I maybe that's the part of literature that I don't have
Yeah.
an aptitude, and my brain doesn't work that way. So I wish it did.
You don't-
I
Just
wish
not your thing.
I wish I could get more on all y'all's levels on how you know so much
Right.
about stuff. I just don't. I'm one-dimensional brain in that particular area.
Getting the allegories and the metaphors that are so prevalent in
Yeah.
literature.
Yeah. Part of it is like, how dare I judge this person's writing. If he meant something different, he would have written something different.
Sure.
He said the horse is blue. Gosh darn it, that horse is blue. Like,
It's never just raining. When it's raining in a book, it's never just raining.
but that's part of me. Is like, how dare I make them say something other than what he wrote?
Yeah.
Like, that's part of the way that I like think of things. I don't know.
Yeah. Piano, by the way, for me.
You wish you were better
I
at.
wish I could care about piano. Like it sounds beautiful. It's a skill. You can impress people at parties.
Ooh,
You can do
I'm,
stuff.
oh, I'm gonna inherit my parents' baby grand, and I do know how to play.
Yeah,
This
you
is coming.
You know how to teach is the question.
This is coming.
You know how to teach someone with no aptitude, who's tone deaf.
Very true.
I understand logically that the piano is a thing, and that it's not like it's. Well, no, I mean like when I hear someone play bass guitar, do I think it's cool? Do I like the sound of it? Yes. There's 4 freaking strings. Like it's not like it's a hard.
Oh no!
See,
Don't insult the bass players.
but I feel
insult the bass
like
players.
piano is. Oh, Jeremy immediately picks up a music. But I feel like piano is a very. It's got a history to it. It's got a richness to it. It's got an infinite number of combinations.
It's true. You're literally, you have 2 hands going, and they could be playing different. It's like as if you're almost kind of playing 2 different instruments in a way.
And I just wish I cared, and I just don't.
Oh man, you're killing me with that one, because anytime there is a piano in a song, I melt.
I just don't care.
Melt. I love it.
I listen to Tori Amos, and I just want to give her a hug and be like, they make Xanax.
Oh my god.
You don't need to.
Wow.
Wow. No. Oh.
But I wish I cared, because I know I should care, and I don't.
Yeah.
Because I'm not musically inclined. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's because I'm not good at it.
That now I can sympathize with how you must feel about me like slandering literature and just being like, pass. Like.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Any final parting words you guys want to add? Anything that you're like, I hope we talk about this that we didn't get to? Yeah. What is it?
My heart went out to the poet, and
Oh my
he's
God.
in the office,
The writer guy. Yeah.
and he's trying to scribble down and to kind of hold on to some memory, I think, of him being as a poet before his dream is changed. And you see what he writes down on the paper, and it was, I was happy. I was happy. And it
That's
made
true.
me,
That's gut-wrenching.
it brought me back to watching The Good Place.
Oh yeah.
When they left notes like, find Chidi, or Chidi is the answer.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's in you somewhere. And for him, he was like, I found something that
Matters.
mattered to him.
Mm.
He wasn't, I'm making assumptions, but in the story it sounded like he was one of the ones that wasn't productive at being a poet. Or again, it could be something stripped for
Quote
him.
unquote successful.
But here he is, like, I was happy. I just, at the very end,
And he kept writing on pieces of paper and crumpling them up and throwing them away. Like he couldn't get it right.
he couldn't get down the words, and then finally he found the words for what either he was feeling, experiencing, or what that was like for him being a poet. And I was just like, because we've been there. We've all been there when our dream is crushed, when you realize this is not going to happen. It is crushing.
Could be worse. You could have a tattoo of it on your chest. Yeah, I might have an Olympic rings tattoo on my chest. Yeah.
Yeah, that sting. My heart felt out to him, because that's what it feels like when you give that up, and it had been such a big part of your life.
That's tough.
Anyway, that was the only
On
thing
that
I wanted
cheery
to add.
that's a great point. That's a great point. Just as a reminder, we probably are doing another writing contest, because we usually roll them into the next one. Like every quarter we do one. So if you have something you want to submit, just go to our website, afterdinnerconversation.com. There's information and links. We get all our submissions through Submittable. But yeah, again, thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. And
Share with your friends. Word of mouth keeps us going, keeps us trucking.
Support us on Patreon at patreon.com.
This is our dream, to keep doing this.
It is kind of. Actually, we're kind of doing we're kind of doing it right now. That's a good point. At least I am. You guys are just, we're placating Colby. Sarah's like, I'm reading about goats. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. You know, the vast majority of people listen haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.